Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Everything But the Song podcast. I'm your host, Tal Weissman, and this is episode number 5. I'm going to keep this intro really short so we can jump right back into part 2 of my conversation with my good friend, Mike McDonnell.
At this point, I joined my first band.
Right.
That I played in for the next 10 years. That took me
the
up
Ruby
to
Spirit?
25. The Ruby Spirit.
Yeah.
It was first called Crash Kills 5.
Okay.
We liked the name, but we misheard our singer's father. He had said that was the best band name he'd ever heard.
Right.
So we named ourselves that. He didn't tell us that it was the best band name of a real band that he had ever heard. So like we were going to like Steve's Music. It's like 15-year-olds and they're like, "Oh, you're in a band?" We're like, "What's it called?" And we're like, "Crash Kills 5." And they're like, "No, you're not. I know Crash Kills 5." And I think Crash Kills 5 is like a semi revered legendary Toronto band from the 70s. I think they have like ties to shadowy men on a shadowy planet.
Okay.
They're around. Like you can find things about them.
It's a weird coincidence that two Toronto bands would come up with that
Well,
name.
we basically stole their name.
Right.
So we did it innocently.
Right.
But then we changed our name to Sadie May Crash.
Okay.
And it wasn't a good band name because everyone asked like what it was and stuff.
Right.
When, the band started to develop and we honestly got like some pretty good chemistry.
Right.
And we started to like do something that was like a little interesting. I got asked to join the band. I started at Marshall McLuhan, what was really cool, which is the high school that I went to, since I had been playing the bass clarinet at a more higher level than what this school was doing. They gave me a lot of solos and I was kind of like highlighted and showcased.
Yep.
Which was really cool to get like little solos and spots, and it was really enjoyable, and I was kind of identified as a musician even amongst teachers and stuff, which was like really cool.
Yeah.
I got asked to start a Christian rock band to back up the choir for a mass that we were going to have.
Yep.
And I asked my friends and I asked too many guitar players, so I played bass.
Yep.
I was playing upright. Once I started playing bass, all the other second wave bands were looking for members, and I got asked and recruited to join this group. My friend Jason Chipperoni gave me a blank CD and or like a mixed CD basically of songs that this band was basically like a mood board of songs.
Sure.
And they were like, it was a lot of No Doubt, Incubus, Third Eye Blind.
Okay.
And I would listen to this. I had a summer job. I worked at a cemetery.
Yep.
Which was very different from being a referee. It was very quiet.
Yeah.
But I was
Nobody's yelling at you.
I was working with men. I was working with real men, and there was a labor dispute, which I didn't know about.
Okay.
And I got there because my dad knew like the funeral director.
Right.
So it got me a job, and so they thought I was like a corporate shill, a little like a snitch.
Whoa.
So I was like, it was a weird way, like, it was weird because they were asking me all these questions that were like way above me. And then they were like, "Oh, the shill, how old are you anyways, kid?" And I was like, "I'm 15. And one of the guys was like, "You're 15? He's like, "Guys, my daughter's 15. This kid's just a kid. Enjoy your summer, buddy." And they were like, they were cool with me. And
Right.
and it was good, but I got to, every morning my mom would drive me to the cemetery and I'd listen to the CD, and it was cool because I'm developing outside of just like Blink-182 and pop punk.
Yeah.
Like it's starting to open up Queens of the Stone Age, a lot of MTV2, The Hives, and it's all in this CD.
Yep.
And I was just listening to it, and it really opened me up to a lot of other musics and stuff. And first full-time job as well. So I'm like cutting grass outside. It's like hard work. I'm working with men.
Yeah.
There's a lot of life lessons. I'm probably like 6 years younger. I'm working with grass cutters who are doing drugs.
Right.
And there was a lot of drug activity that they had just cleaned up in the cemetery.
Right.
So I learned about what guys were like from the perspective of coworkers who would come in to work after drinking all night, or recovering from heroin, or selling, bad side hustles on the side. The kids I was like, my supervisors were all doing ketamine and all of these things. And I was also like thanks, mom and dad. They don't, I don't know if they knew this side of it, or if I really internalized it as a 15-year-old, but like, it was also unique because these guys kept saying to me like, "Don't end up here." which I disagree with. I think that it's like a great job, and these guys, you know, did well and they provided for their families and stuff like that. But it was also,
Yeah, but maybe they expected more for themselves. And, you know, there's
yeah,
obviously, I think a lot of times people just say that when they see someone who was at that age and just say like, you know, don't let your potential of, you know, doing greater things escape you by ending up working for a cemetery when you're this age.
yeah. I think
You
it
know?
was something like that, and it was like, it was cool to learn because I was like so gung ho on music at this point.
Right.
It was just so exciting, and like,
Yeah.
and then I had these guys who were like, you know, don't do this, don't end up here, kid. Like, you know, I've been here for,
Yeah.
I'm retiring in 5 years, and if I could take it all back, I would. You know, like just kind of that kind of stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
it was good, but also on top of that, it's like I had to cut straight lines around the tombstones and stuff, and like, you know, the idea of attention to detail
Yeah.
started to take place, and the
Yeah.
fact that I didn't really have much of it, and
Right.
the guys would be like, "Yo, Mac, look at these lines, like they're shit. Like, what are you doing? Like, I
Yeah,
gotta do
yeah.
this again. You know what? Go on, do the empty field. Like, just cut grass in the empty field for 8 hours
Yeah.
a day." And like I was like, okay, I gotta get better. Like,
Yeah.
that's something that I've had happened. Strive to be better, more perfect in music all the time.
Yeah.
But
But
that
it
was
also puts you in a place where you learn to sometimes take criticism, you know,
Yes.
which is such an important thing as a musician. I think, you know, so many musicians that I've worked with, I think the best ones, you know, will take criticism, obviously constructive criticism, but they will take it the right way, and they will know to filter out the bad, like the unnecessary stuff versus the stuff that actually means something and it's going to improve them. And I think if you're exposed to it from an early age and you learn how to accept that, it just makes you better as a human being in general, but as a musician, I mean, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like older people telling me to do a better job, like an
Right.
adult being
Yeah.
like, you have to, like, you're here.
Yep.
We need you to do a better job because
Right.
you're making work harder for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And that was good to learn because maybe a year later I would be in the studio working out those same experiences
Yeah.
with taking bass tracks. And it was that same thing, but I had it happen before where it
Yeah.
was like, you know, now instead of cutting in a straight line, I got to cut a straight
Bass
track.
Yeah.
And
You have to lock in with the drummer. You have to feel the right dynamic, you know, and if you're not quite on it, then if you're working with the right producer, they will point it out.
yeah, I was really lucky. So this band, we were unlucky as well. We were picked up from a manager who is like an enthusiast of music. Maybe thought he was better than he turned out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have a
Very
lot
common
of
case.
I could do 90 minutes on this, and maybe we will one day. But we were invited to go to a jingle house on the weekends and record.
Right.
And it was like a really cool thing because, you know, I had hockey going on.
Yeah.
I had school. I had, you know, being a high school student and stuff like that. And now we're recording artists.
Yeah.
We're performing and we're adding in this to part of the equation. And it was interesting because I was taking it like super seriously, but like in my parents' eyes, like it was a hobby like hockey.
Yeah.
But I had been doing hockey for, you know, 13 years at this point. So
Right.
like you can't miss a game or a practice to go to a recording session or something like that.
Yeah.
And that was like the first session that we ever did. We had to get the last take because my dad was waiting to pick me up outside, and we nailed it. And on the recording, you can literally hear, it wasn't a great studio. You can literally hear the studio phone ring. It's
with
my
your
dad
dad.
being like, Michael, I'm outside. We need to go to practice. And
Wow.
you know, it was like a really cool thing to be doing, you know, music and stuff like that. But it was, you know, it was still like, I was still 15.
Yeah.
And this was, my parents were concerned about this manager and like this direction,
Right.
this path that we were going on.
But do you think they were concerned because your pursuit of music was starting to get more serious, maybe more serious than they would have liked it to be? Or do you think that they were concerned because this manager in particular was turning out to be somebody that was, you know, somewhat worrisome for them?
I think they thought that as cute and professional that we were at 16, that we still had a lot of life to live.
Right.
And when you take 4 hungry musicians that are very, very much confined to a fishbowl, which is their high school.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they are deciding not to go to school and they're just going to pursue this.
Yep.
And you're still like, I was 17. I went back to school for a 5th year, which was an amazing experience.
Right.
But to keep it on this, it was a lot to feel that my parents didn't like the manager.
Right.
He was a sociopath.
Right.
We found out later.
Yeah.
He was well intentioned, but I think that his perspective changed, and what he ended up doing, and maybe he didn't know it at the beginning, and it led to this, but he was just turning each one of us against each other.
Yeah.
And we use the word cult loosely, but that's what we kind of became. Is it became this like weird like back talk enigma wrapped in our dreams.
Right.
So we couldn't let it go, but we really should have.
Yeah.
And that was a unique experience to have to go through. But in the early days, we were just given all these opportunities. And I think that we had a female singer, and that was a bit of a rarity. And there was a lot of opportunity leading to shows and stuff like that. We were being fed we were heavily being fed that we were the next, like, it thing.
Right.
The only person that was telling us that was our manager.
Right.
And he was controlling everything.
Yeah.
And whatever our individual concerns were, he was just telling us individually exactly what we wanted to hear.
Right.
And it was really, really detrimental to our health.
Yeah.
But we had just left high school. We had done prom. We had, we have our best friends ever. And it's just so amazing. And we're so excited to start the rest of our lives. And then all of a sudden, like, we're now getting jobs to pay rent because our parents don't want us living in our houses without paying rent. And we don't have school anymore. And we're not seeing our friends every day.
Yep.
And we've hung our hat on music, and our tag team songwriters, our front person, our lead guitar player, who were dating in high school, just broke up. And we're about to start this lifelong adventure together.
Yeah.
And she starts dating a jerk, and he goes insane. And he doesn't go insane. He was emotionally upset.
Right.
There's a lot of
turmoil.
It was like when we were 16, it just was just wine and roses. And when we were 18, like, it was just a struggle. Right. And we slugged it out like that for like 7 years, just carrying a dead body of emotions behind us. And we were so professional, so organized, so composed, but really we were just at each other's necks. Yeah. We were tired and we were stressed.
Well, it's like being in a bad relationship, not knowing that it's a bad relationship, just thinking that this is how relationships are.
Yeah, it was the only thing we knew.
Yeah, and until you realize that there's a different way of doing it. I mean, I totally identify with that because for me, when my first serious band ended, which was also like a 7-year ordeal, I only knew one way of being in a band, and I only understood one way in which it worked, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And it wasn't, a lot of it was my fault because I've sort of built this image in my head of what hard work is and what dedication means to musicianship. And it was much like what you said, it was very cult-like, and it didn't leave any room for anything else. No. And you're
chastised in my experience, sorry to cut you off, but like if you had outside interests, like that was like a band meeting. Exactly. And you were like letting us down. Yeah. And like, how dare you? You wrote a song and it's not for this band?
Yeah, exactly. It's very all in.
Wow. Are you against us? Like what's going on?
Yeah.
How come you want to work with this other guy right here and write a song with him? Like, how
well,
dare
it's
you?
a very tribal mentality. And I feel like, one thing I've noticed, just talking about this is like, it seems like for you, you've always been in teams and be it the hockey or your bands in high school or your other band or the choir or like, it's always like, you like the team environment, you like the team dynamic, and I'm the same way. I love it.
Yeah. I think I feel protected.
Yes. But there's confidence in that. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I think that it teaches you a lot about just learning how to deal with different types of personalities, and it's okay. It's like, especially if you join a new band where you're like the new guy, you get to know these new people, and you might not, otherwise you may have not become friends with them at all. You have nothing in common. Like you don't, and I've experienced that a few times in my life where I've, played with people in certain scenarios, even when you're gigging, even when it's not like a band, it's just like, whatever, like it's how you and I met, just gigging for the singing contest. And, but you're still spending time together and you figure out, okay, this is what this person is about. This is what they like, and you get to know them. And I think that's a life skill of its own. And I think the more you do that, the more you understand that there is no all in. There's just like, this is a particular group. Or, you might be, maybe you're the primary songwriter and you're doing things with them, but then it's okay to do other things, and it's okay to be involved with other people that way. In fact, it's probably healthier because you gain perspective and you're not locked in with this one box in one direction, and you can't see, you just have the blinders on, and that's all you know.
Well, when you do it with the same people for so long, it's it's also, there's a good part too.
Yeah.
Like there's a magic when you
100%.
just and there's something that you have with people when you can play, like in a rhythm section, playing bass, for example, like with Jason, who I love, who drives me crazy, and I love him.
Yeah.
He and I have a wonderful relationship.
Right.
When he's playing the drums and I'm playing the bass, we'll bicker constantly. And we've been doing it for a decade. He will do something. He'll hit the hi-hat in a way, like in a magical way, where I'll play something and we will be so in sync. No way that you could get there without the amount of dedication and work.
Right.
And we have a chemistry that's like a universal language that we just feel.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful. But just because he and I have that doesn't mean that performing in other groups, you can't have a fluid musical relationship with different people.
Yeah.
And when you start so young with people, you feel like you could only ever play with like 7 people that would understand you.
Exactly.
And it's like one of those things. And it was Mike's Sleeth for me when he started to take playing as a professional musician very seriously. And he started being like, you got to hear, this guy playing. Oh, I just met this guy, Phil Teslis, and he plays he just got out of the Humber program. And that was an interesting period when I hit 22, as all these like graduates from Humber came. Right. And that was never a thing on my radar, but all of a sudden, like these musicians that were just like out of this world good.
Yeah.
And we've played with a lot of them.
Yeah.
They just were like, oh my God, they've been taught to do this thing we've just been trying to figure out on our own.
Yeah.
And that was like a really crazy thing to see. And while they were in school learning this, like and songwriting was something that I wanted to do, and it was really hard for me. I bought a book at Indigo at Yorkdale. The date is like June 3rd, 2003.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I still have this book, and it's going to be like, I'm going to write like all my hit songs in this book. Like it was, and then I started writing, and it was terrible.
Right.
But it was, everybody in the band, like once we left high school, like we weren't so the same anymore.
Right.
And, I got a job. I had a high school job working at Main Drug Mart.
Yep.
And it's now a Shoppers Drug Mart. It's a pharmacy. I was a stock boy. Yep. I started working there full time. They totally swindled me to working like 12-hour shifts on like Friday and Sunday. I went from like, I had this coolest schedule as a stock boy from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday to Friday.
Wow.
And then they're like, we could give you a raise and you could be a supervisor. And then I was working like 60 hours a day. So now I'm like tired.
Yeah.
And, you know, now like I turned 19, I can, you know, go for beers with my friends and stuff. And like, all of a sudden, like we're going to nightclubs and, you know, there's different types of music and scenes and we're meeting people and like MySpace is a thing and we're starting to like find these bands and new landmarks to hit. Like there's this band in Toronto called Spiral Beach and they were like the coolest shit ever. And we were like, you know, their top 8 was like the bands in Toronto. Still Life, Still, The Miles, Don Lands and Mortimer, Boxes and Bags. Like these like super sick art bands. And so now they start to influence like who you are.
Yeah.
You're trying to be like super artsy and cool and everything's like you're trying to appeal to a higher brow audience in a sense. And you're listening to like new things, but you're also like working so hard as a stock boy.
Yeah.
And you're wearing this suit and now like, you know, I have new jobs and it's like, I went from like working there Tuesdays and Thursdays to like, now I'm part of like the full-time flow and I'm like going to get coffees for everybody. Yeah. And like, now I'm starting to realize that I'm going to do this every day. Like now my routine is I go get coffees and I know that.
Does that make you think like at that point that you go like, does that existence kind of make you think, well, fuck, I don't want to do this. Does that push you more into music or does that have any effect on how you end up?
Well, this was going to be, it's kind of funny because we're like talking about it and like recording it, but like that was like chapter like 6 of my memoir of like me being this insane artist. Maybe, and also like, I think that like we could look at, you know, when I was, you know, 4 and 5 and 6 and I was going to the NHL, you know, totally first round. Like, I think like that was the way we looked at it. We were being fed a lot of, false information on how good we were. Right. And I think it was really how good we are for how young we are. And let's see what happens when they're 22.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I just remember sitting there eating like kettle chips, honey mustard kettle chips was my evening snack. And just staring at this thing, looking at the schedule and switching shifts with people so I could make practice or gigs and stuff. And which always left me with like this ridiculous work schedule. Yeah. And just thinking like it's all going to be worth it one day. Yeah. It's all going to be, this is just like, this is where I'm earning my stripes. Like this is.
So you saw it more as like a burden you had to carry, like something, you know, some sort of like a road you had to travel down to get you to where you have to go.
Yes. You have to work hard. Yeah. But the thing that I think was a fault of the way that the dynamic was beginning was that the band knew that I was a hard worker. Right. And I think I ended up paying for a lot of recording sessions, photo sessions, music videos, art ideas, projects. Right. And the rest of them were, you know, writing songs. And I remember like we did an EP and then we went up to my parents' farm. We set it all up out in the barn. It was like super cool. It was such a fun day. And, you know, we went and we got our groceries and all this stuff. And we got there and they played us one song. Right. And I was like, I'm like, do you understand like that, like I'm going to work like 80 hours next week to set this whole weekend up. My parents aren't here. We're here. There's an electricity issue, all this stuff. And it's one fucking song.
That's what you got. Yeah.
I'm like, it's a fucking, and I'm like, and you ripped it off. It's a Dick Dale song. Like, come on. And like the lyrics are good and stuff, but it's like, what are we going to do? We're going to play the song all afternoon. And that's what we did. But like, so I started to develop a bit of a bitter attitude. Right. Because here I am like working. Yeah. And the band, the manager is starting to, you know, he's telling us like, you know, the lead singer and the lead guitar player, like they're the real deal. Oh wow. They're prodigies. They're phenomenal. Right. And you know, not to say you guys aren't. But that's where we have to focus.
But
listen. there's only one thing these two can do with their God-given talent.
It's write songs.
Is this.
Yeah.
They can only do this.
Yeah.
They can only be stars.
Yeah.
So,
such a horrible, it's not just towards the rest of the band, but that is such a horrible message to put towards the singer and the guitar player, because it's like
them up.
Hell yeah, because it's such a hard landing after that. It's when you realize, especially now when you get to 2020 and it's like, guess what? You're in the do-it-yourself era. You have to do a lot of other things other than write songs. And it's probably, something that just is so much harder for people to do when they've been fed that narrative for so long.
Well, also, and the narrative kept getting more abstract as it went on.
Right.
So it created unease, and when we would question it, it was thrown back on us. Like, well, you did this and this, and also what would end up happening too is like, our manager would call the lead singer and be like, "How's practice today?"
Right.
And she'd be like, "Oh, it's good. Mike's having a bit of issue with like this thing, but yeah, it was all good." And then it'd be like band meeting. "Mike, you're just not able to keep up here. We have a standard with this group. You're just gonna have to. I don't know what it is, but you're just gonna have to." And it was so like my esteem was just being like,
right,
just crumbled. And we were working really hard. We were practicing like you gotta eat. This is the quote. You gotta eat, sleep, shit, fuck, suck, lick music. And if you don't do that, you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
And Mike, what we need you to do for this band is you gotta work. You gotta raise the money.
Oh, so you gotta.
We all have to do it,
yeah.
But you're only gonna do it.
Yeah.
We all need to do it. But listen, Paige, the lead singer. Yeah, you're gonna have to cut that one out.
I'll cut that one out. Yeah.
The lead singer, she just can't be seen working as behind a cosmetic counter. What does that send to what image does that send to the industry? Now,
who doesn't know who she is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and that's looking back on that now, the thing that I've realized too is talking to people in the music industry that have career jobs, they're fully aware that you're not making money as a musician.
No.
And they understand that you're going to work whatever jobs to make this work. And they actually hope that you do, because you're going to have to do it in order to succeed.
Yeah. Look, when my band started working with Slate Music, one of the very first questions they asked us was, do you guys have jobs? Because we said, yeah, well, this guy does this guy does that. Like we're all, we're paying our rent and whatever. Like we're not, nobody had a career at that point, but we had jobs.
Yeah.
And they said, good. We're, we want to make sure that the people we work with are workers. They're hard workers. Like we're not, this isn't, and I think what they were, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think what they were trying to say is like, listen, man, yes, like there's no secret about who Gary Slate is and who Slate Music are and what kind of financial, abilities they have, but they're not there to hand you money. They're here to invest in your music. That doesn't mean that that's it. You've hit a gold mine and you're going to be, all your expenses forever now going to be paid for. This isn't a free ride.
Well, that's what the whole idea of this project became.
Right.
Is the idea of a free ride. And
right. Inexpensive.
Cut shortcuts. You don't need to play every gig. You don't need to do this. This is a waste of time.
Right.
So every decision was divided in an argument. Yeah. We also, so now I'm working like crazy, get all this money and stuff, and to just blow on this band.
Yeah.
And then it just starts getting weirder. Like they start to look for like investors.
Yeah.
And it got really shady. Like we ended up in a lot of weird spots, like people involved with like Scientology.
Oh, here we
and
go.
like that kind of stuff. Like we're meeting these people and they're very lovely and very nice, but like the concept was to fish for money.
Right.
And none of it ever, like nobody ever invested in us.
Yeah.
But there have been some times where like I'm just kind of walking down the street and I'll think about something and I'll have to call one of them and be like, hey, do you remember that time we drove to like Rochester and we went to that mansion and we talked to this woman about just who the band was, and then they were at our show at the Mod Club 2 weeks later, and then we never heard from them again. Like, well, was there more to that story? And be like, no, that was it. And you're like, okay, wow. So it started to get skewed farther and farther. And the other thing too is the artists that, you know, with the God-given talent.
Yeah.
We went from shared songwriting to individual ownership of songs. So now I'm like cut out. So now it's like, now I'm working a job because I wanted to be a musician and I'm doing everything but being a musician. I'm working, I'm a supervisor. I have young, you know, cashiers and they're giving me money and there's responsibility like an adult, and I'm playing in this band, but really what I'm doing is I'm just giving them all my money, and we rehearse a lot, but we're not playing shows. And I want to write a song, but they'll never do a song of mine.
So they'll take your money, but not your music.
Yeah. And it just started to get weirder and weirder as it went on. And it really like sucked the soul out of me. And there was a lot of emphasis on like being prompt on emails. And there would be like, I think there was something like, I don't know, 20,000 emails at the end of the day, just of nothing. And it was a really interesting experience, but at the same time, like, here I am working and I'm still like providing for myself, and I had to pay rent. My parents didn't give me like, it wasn't like to teach me a lesson. They were like, no,
you're an adult, you're paying rent.
Yeah. Like I was paying rent, not far off from what I'm paying now. I was like, my friends are paying like nothing. And they're like, yeah. But they also moved to a farm. And so I became like the games warden of this house, basically. And I had like home responsibilities and like you're trying to get it all done and live a life too and clean up after house parties and, you know, just like doing fun things. And you're also having this like horrible experience.
Yeah.
I then got a job working for a bodybuilding supplements company. My friend Jeff Da Silva, we were one of my friend's 20th birthday parties. Drunk, eating fresco pizza, and I had a medical issue. I was wearing self-induced, but Vans checkerboard shoes. Yeah, I was wearing those at these shifts, lifting boxes and stuff like that. And I developed an improper walking pattern, and it started in my big toe. And so we did all these tests, and it turned out that I didn't have gout, which would have been impossible. But then it was my ankles, and it was my knees, and it was my hips, and I had to stop working. Oh. And it turned out I just needed orthotics, and we got it all worked out. Right. But in that period, I made the move to be like, I'm not going to be a stock boy forever. I need to get another type of job here. Right. And so I got this job at this bodybuilding supplements company through my friend Jeff.
Just a side note, this podcast is already worth, it's like anything, just finding out all these different jobs you had. I'm having a hard time keeping track. So when I listen back to this, I'm gonna do the intro. So, you know, I know you as I know him as the bass player, but turns out he was also a cemetery worker, a bass clarinetist, a stock boy at a at a pharmacy, and a bodybuilding supplement company worker.
I was
I'm sure there's more coming.
Oh yeah, there probably is. Well, I was an advisor, and we also we had a warehouse, and it was really smart of my boss, who his cousin was my friend who referred me. Right. But he got really big on Google AdWords when that just became a thing. Oh, okay. And invested more money than our salaries in that. Right. And so there was an Eastern and Western warehouse for this huge nationwide bodybuilding supplements company. And we had the Eastern part of Canada. Sure. And because of his Google AdWords initiative, it went from 40 packages a day to 111. Oh, and it just it got big. But Jeff's brother Eric was the jazz guitar player, the senior jazz guitar player to my junior jazz guitar playing. Okay. And so now I'm working with one of my early music idols, that guy that, when we played those high school talent shows and I was on at 4:45, he was on at 9. He's closing the thing. Right. And it was really cool to form a relationship with him. And also, as I've kept really close with all my friends from high school, weirdly, the grades in and around me have done the same. Yeah. And I was introduced to a group of friends that knew me from high school, but now they're 24. Right. And now we're going to, other bands and stuff. And I'm, there's now like more of like a indie artsy folk scene coming out of like the esoteric band stuff. And like the whole Blink-182 thing has gone to the wayside. And it's more like Bell and Sebastian now. And I'm starting to see bands with bass clarinetists. and like, cause it's like this cool folk thing. And all of a sudden, like I played the indie instrument. I'm so blown away. And I'm hanging out with these guys and they're, there's a lot more like drinking and partying and more of a music scene with what I was doing with this project with my band at the time. It was very laser focused. So we got to the venue at 6:00. We set up our stuff. We played our exact set. We were 6 minutes, we had 6 minutes left because we played our songs way too fast. We got off stage, we said hello to everyone. Then we talked to our girlfriends. We sat at the merch table. We took all of our stuff home. Like, it was very clinical. So there was no like going to meet people and play shows or like backyard shows, patio shows, warehouse shows. Yeah. We did do those things, but it was like, there was this like scene that all of a sudden I was, starting to meet people. And like, I was in a band that had like some clout. Right. So people were like, "Oh, this is Mike from the Ruby Spears," and we started to like hobnob. Yeah. And that was really cool. But that's like it's another element of artistry and stuff, is like networking but it was also weird because it wasn't something that I could bring back to the band, that I was like meeting people. And
no, well, not that band. I mean, no, if they don't appreciate the benefit of that, but it sounds like it was just, that's in that scenario, people weren't really appreciative of anything that was what they dictated or what the band dictated.
Yeah, so. It was a we, but it was actually a me thing. Yeah. And I started to notice this more and more because I'm starting to hang out with these artists. We're starting to actually have fun. Yeah. And we're starting to like, hang out till the sun comes up, and we're starting to, just enjoy ourselves a little more. And it was cool because the fruits of our labor as a young band, all of a sudden we're now like 21, 22, and we're better than most of the groups because we've had, we have like 50 shows under our belts. And we've opened for a lot of older bands, and we can hold our own, and we're starting to like lead the charge and like headline. Yeah. Which is like also cool because we're starting to notice that like the other IT bands are starting to come to our shows, and people are starting to take notice of us. Right. That was very cool, but I started to see that like, oh, maybe there's like an outside to this. Like, maybe I don't have to just be in this band. Maybe it's not that important. And around this time, Mike Sleeth said to me, like, I'm going for this as Mike Sleeth drums, basically. He's like, you should come with me. Right. And I was like, at the time, I was like, no, I'm in this band. Like, we're gonna take over the world together. And he's like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna go like skyrocket an insane career. And I'm like, I couldn't be more proud of what he's done and stuff. But it was also very amazing to have one of my best friends that I could always call and talk about music with, and be like, hey, we're like doing this. Like, what's going on with your life? What are you doing? And, and as the band, started to fall apart, and, we had been told for 10 years now that they were the best thing ever. Yeah. And we're one phone call away from a private jet to New York City to sign a contract with, a gold pen, with like, and so that was really hard. Cause like, I'm still slugging away, working, trying to write songs. Right. I wrote a song December 2008. The band liked it. They were like, that's pretty good. They weren't going to play it, but they liked it. Right. And then they were like, you just got to keep doing it, At the bodybuilding supplements job, at my 90-day probation, they gave me a $500 gift card to Long McQuaid, which was unbelievable. And I went and I bought a Tascam Porta Studio with it. So I started recording my own songs. Yeah. And recorded the first one, and it popped, and like they all had compliments and they were excited. And this band was heavily influenced on the Beatles, and I think they started to see me as like, with my one song, like the George Harrison, like maybe I get a song every album. kind of thing.
And it'll be the song something.
Yeah, but that's kind of how they were looking at it. It's like, maybe we'll let him have a song kind of thing. Like, if his standard is up. And then I wrote this like love song. I just like this beautiful, I still love it to this day.
Mm-hmm.
It's this just nice song. And I sent it to them and I received silence. Nobody responded. And then the manager like called a meeting and just was like, this, like holding the CD in the case. This is just not good. This is just, we have a standard that we abide by. And like, my heart is just like, I could have just taken scissors and just cut it into a million pieces. Yeah. And that really hurt me. And it's like, I did it. And I wrote a song, because also with this band, like I didn't have to be part of it, to be part of everything. I didn't have to write a song. I had to work and do well. And we all it was all for one, one for all. Yeah. This is my contribution. Yeah. I'm an equal member to this. And then when the idea of like, no, they're going to write the songs, you're just going to be the bass player in this particular setting, it was so heartbreaking for me. Right. Because I realized that two people, when we became the biggest band in the world, two people were going to make all the money. Yeah. And now all of a sudden,
claim all the ownership of it.
Oh, and it was
and also it it probably puts you in a point where you go, well, what would stop them from getting rid of me then? If push came to shove, and
I was tier 2. Absolutely. Yeah. And it was like all based on like we all were in this because it was all for one, one for all, just like, the biggest bands in the world, like U2. Yeah. And even though the Beatles are just like the absolute amazing thing, look at all the controversy they had over songwriting credits and all of this. And let's just avoid that. It's only going to work, his words, it's only going to work if it's all for one, one for all. And I'll take my 20%. And then all of a sudden it's like not. And it really crushed me emotionally. And I couldn't speak. When I say like I couldn't talk about my feelings. Right. I couldn't laugh. Like it just was gone. I did like a thing. Like I was just a shell of a human. Right. I was
from that interaction with the song.
from the whole experience. And then this idea of like, I'm now going to have to, if I want a piece of the pie, now I have to write really good songs that everyone's going to like, that somebody else is going to sing my lyrics. And just the odds are stacked up against you. And so all of these things are becoming difficult, but with these new people I'm meeting, like they're valuing me. Right. And they're relating to me as an equal and they're caring about me.
Well, they don't have I think at that point, you're meeting people who haven't established an opinion of you based on how high up the totem pole you are in that organization. They don't know you as the guy who was, unwillingly placed somewhere down the totem pole as like the working class. Yeah. They just see you as a musician and they go, well, whatever you do is valid, Yeah. If the only parameter would be, is it good? Not like, are you the songwriter or should you be allowed to do it?
Yeah. And sometimes, you write a song that's like, this isn't the best song, but let's just do it. Like, let's get it out. Hey, you know what? Let's try. Maybe we should just encouragement. And I try to now, like if anybody writes anything, and having a podcast where I've interviewed tons of musicians, like whatever you send me, like I'm never going to be the person that's going to go like, I think it needs work. I'm going to say congratulations. Like, in every podcast I start with congratulations because for me, it's so important and so amazing that you did this thing. Yeah. Like it's like, it was so hard. It became a symbol of something so hard for me to get over. And now watching people do it, like I just am so, just so proud of them because it became like this thing where like I didn't have a voice. Right. And other people around me started to take notice of this and I started to like work with other people. And I really great thing too is that like my parents were gone and I had this house and I had this basement. My brother was gone to university and my
parents on the farm and then.
Yeah. So it's like all of a sudden I had this jam space where like we could hang out at like 11 PM and like play and start to like let it out.
Yeah.
And I still have them in these like epic jams where we're just like, it's a lot of them are Mike Sleeth, Andrew Montero, and myself just going like 10 out of 10 for like hours. Like every song is going, and Mike's just going crazy. Like, and it's just so unadulterated. And it's awesome. But like all of a sudden I'm starting to like get a little bit more feel and experience. And that's was starting to like, you know, really be like, you know what, I'm kind of good at this thing. Right. I may not be recognized as much as I should be. And it also made me work harder. Like I became like a bombastic bass player where I was just like, I knew that I was important in this band. Like I made myself irreplaceable in the way that I presented myself. I played, I put everything I could into this band, even though it was terrible. I still put all my eggs in this basket and I believed in it. And even though my parents saw this not through rose-colored glasses, like I just felt like because it was wrong and I still was doing it, everything was just so much harder. Right. And then when like somebody would fuck up and we'd be like, why did you fuck up? Now we have to have a meeting and get yelled at. And like, then we started getting mad at each other. And then the tandem songwriting partnership, all of a sudden one of them falls out of favor and now they're the bottom rung member and they've never been that. Wow. And we're like explaining to them like, oh yeah, no, like you just got to get used to the taste of a shit sandwich and then it's not gonna be that bad. And then we like kind of realize like, oh my God, like we're telling somebody to just get used to enjoying your time on the bottom because we've been there so long, we're just used to it. Yeah. We're just saying like, yeah, man, just get used to being in the mud with us.
Which is never a good thing. It's just like I mean, even the fact that you have to feel that way, that you are in the mud. Like I think when you're in a band, you should just not feel that, period. And I think the only thing you can do is just talk about these things and be open about it and kind of communicate. And if people don't communicate about it, that's when it becomes like people, especially at that age, like 21, 22, I think you're not developed enough yet to understand that you have to talk about your feelings and what's on your mind for it to be a healthy relationship with your band members. Yeah. So
we had so many meetings and then so many like realization meetings where we all went around the room and talked about our feelings and stuff. Right. We had so many of those reconciliation, damnation experiences that there were no songs being written. Like we were a good band because we were a good band, right. But we weren't getting better. We weren't getting stronger. Yeah. We did an album, but like the identity of who we were and who this project was so marred that it was just so confusing. Yeah. And around this time, Mike started to take like every single gig as a drummer and he was just doing everything. And I had the Supplements Canada job, the Supplements Company job had ended. It was like the franchise was pulled away. And so now I didn't have a job. Right. And the band was kind of coming to an end. The guitar player had been kicked out. And not to do an inside baseball thing, but the guitar player was kicked out. So we had a termination notice that basically activated a partnership agreement with us. Right. And then when the three of us defunct the band because of a situation that everything was just so horrible. Right. That what the manager and singer wanted to do we got hired to write songs for another artist. Right. And I wrote a blues song and it went extremely well. Right. And it was the best ever. And I was like, I wrote a song for someone and everyone loved it. And the room was joyous and we were all recording it and it was amazing. And then the next 2 days where it wasn't my song, were not well received. The producer didn't speak English. He had a translator. Okay. And the session wasn't going right. The songwriter just bypassed the producer. Wow. And it ended with the producer saying at the end of the day, "Fuck you! I am the producer." But he like had to ask. He's like, "How do I say this?" Yeah. And then it was like a laugh, but it wasn't like a. It was like
okay, shit.
So we got through it, and then they just wanted to like kind of like throw everyone under the bus, and the three of us, the rhythm section, basically looked at us and were like, what if, like, you know, we've been in this project so long, it's all we've ever thought about. But like, what about if we were to, like, you know, have families, or like what if this situation was actually like actually made money?
Yeah.
Like, would we ever trust what we got or what we were worth? Or
Right.
like, we would always be handcuffed. And we just decided at that moment that we're like, it's got to end.
Yeah.
So band was ending. I was in a relationship through this whole band experience, and that ended. And it was a lot to do with my emotional state due to like the project, and also working a ton, and also having like a fantastic friend group that I love.
Yeah.
They all took so much time, and the then girlfriend was priority number 5 eventually. And so that ended. The band ended. We were, the manager presented the 3 of us remaining members with a very large amount of money that we owed him. And it turns out that he had been spending a lot of money that we didn't know about. Oh. And sorry, this is so inside baseball, but the singer was still to be managed and is managed by the manager. And we had worked on all this material that was unreleased, and they had said that they were going to release it as a solo project. And the money that Jason and I owed individually, so a third of what we owed him,
right,
they would recoup it based on the success of the project as a solo artist. That being said, if they spent money on this AAA American radio campaign that they were planning, and it didn't become the biggest thing ever, as they obviously it was, but in the event that it didn't,
in the case,
we would also be on the hook for all costs incurred.
What?
Within reason. And so we went to the lawyer's office.
Who said that reason?
But I just remember Jason saying to the paralegal we dealt with, like, what's within reason? He goes, within reason is the reason why lawyers exist.
I like that.
So like at this point in time, the gloves were off with like our parents. Our parents were like so upset that all their kids were just like shells of themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents were like emotionally upset and willing to put liens on their houses if it meant like taking this guy to court over this money and stuff. Like,
wow.
It was like gloves off kind of experience. And my father recommended another lawyer to, again, this is the sing-song band from when I was 15, you know, Blink-182, Love and Happiness, and We're Gonna Be Friends Forever and stuff. So
now, cut forward to
so here's me, like the crazy bodybuilding supplements clerk and bass player. At this time too, it's because the warehouse closed, he gave me a temporary job working at a bodybuilding storefront. And as you can see me, I'm not a bodybuilder, so I did a really good job over the phone. So when I'd impress like clients with like my vast knowledge on Crealkaline creatine over an acidic based one or something like that, they just look me up and down and be like, who else is here, honey? Like, can I talk to somebody that like could lift more than 60 pounds? So that wasn't working out, but we went to a second lawyer and basically they said like, if you think that they're bluffing on this number and you guys think that you'd actually be prepared to go to court, well, what do you guys own? And we were like, well, we have like publishing in the band. He's like, tell you what, let's just make this really simple. I think you should levy whatever you have against them and just say, you take it all. If you believe that this project is going to be so successful, have the whole pie. And just absolve us of the debt. And they said, seems fair, which was weird.
But it's a way to shut people up. I mean, you're saying, hey, take all the profit. Look, you said it's going to be a hit, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, So not to make an epic first podcast, because I mean, I gotta say, like, as this is like a trial run, I feel fantastic. I'm getting so much off my chest.
I'm so glad. Like, I know, like, there's obviously, this is this is a story that I've known of in parts, but I didn't know all the details.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of value in understanding what it means to be in a band and how much is, how much each member actually means. With it being a partnership, with it being like something that, it's not just songwriting, and it's not just, investing the money or investing the time. It's everything together, and it's that feeling of togetherness. And, this is, if you have to take that into a real life situation, not that bands aren't real life, but like, whether it be with coworkers or be it with, in a relationship, like there's never the concept of somebody being worth more to the cause than someone else is stupid. And it's never a good way to look at anything. And I think, so far for me, the greatest takeaway is like, boy, did someone shit the bed thinking that they were worth more?
Yeah. No, it's and it's still kind of playing out. And what I will say to cap it off for now is there was a moment that I realized through this process that I don't want to stop playing music.
Yeah.
And I looked at two of the members, the rhythm section, Juliana Iniziello and Jason Chipperoni, and it said to them that we can't stop playing music because of this.
Yeah.
Like, even though the situation has been terrible on us, we can't let them win.
No.
We have to play. And so I said, listen, like, I've been tinkering on my Tascam Porta studio for a couple years now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I think that this has given me the confidence to, like, we did that song with that session and everyone was happy, and I could have almost got paid to write a song for somebody.
Yeah.
And it, we could have almost done it with that, but you know what? That taste felt good.
Yeah.
And let's form a band. My brother was managing an acoustic duo, and I'm like, let's start a band. Let's play new songs. The show's in 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks to do this.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah. All right. So this is obviously the beginning of, I think, a series of podcasts that Mike and I are going to have periodically as Mike and I have spoken about a lot of these things over time, and yet here I am finding out a whole wealth of new information.
It's interesting because, I mean, you and I do talk a lot, and like, it is like episode 1 in review. Like, first off, I think that there's a lot of stuff that a lot of artists, I think, are going to look forward to talking about, because these aren't the normal talking points.
No.
But I think that they're very important to really identify the true character of an artist. And the real journey beyond what they initially would just like you to see.
Yeah, and I think that if not to crown myself as that, but if I can be with this particular podcast, if I can give people that perspective where they listen to the podcast again, if they choose to listen to themselves talking, but if they listen to it or even just to talking about it during the podcast, they can kind of put some 2 and 2 together about some things that went right or wrong in their lives, and that would make them make better decisions about certain things.
Yeah.
Boy, I think we've achieved something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you have listened to the first episode of Everything But the Song, thank you. And Mike, I love you. Thank you for coming to this podcast.
Too, Tal. Thank you so much, and congratulations on your first episode.
Yes. And I guess we'll see you next time. And in the meantime, keep living life. Peace.